He was sworn to hunt monsters, but the moment he chained her, the bond chose, and suddenly the hunter became the hunted by his own heart. The forest breathed around him in a rhythm he had long ago learned to read. Branches creaked with the weight of owls. Leaves whispered with the stir of passing wind. Beneath it all lay the heartbeat of his quarry, faint but steady, hidden among the thickets and shadowed stone. Kael Duran crouched low, fingertips brushing the damp earth. A smear of paw print stained the soil, too large for a wolf, too heavy for a hound. The edges blurred into something almost human. His jaw tightened. He had been on her trail for days, and each sign carried the same impossible message: half beast, half woman. The order called it a curse. Villagers called it a monster. For Kael, it was a target, and targets did not escape. He rose soundlessly, adjusting the wolf pelt cloak on his shoulders. His steel-gray eyes scanned the tree line, narrowing at the faint glow seeping through the fog. Her scent clung to the air, sharp, wild, unsettling. It tugged at him in ways no quarry ever had. The longer he breathed it, the more something in his chest stirred. A pulse he did not welcome. He shook it off. Instincts meant survival. Instincts could also mean death. Kael checked the weight of his sword where it rode across his back, and the daggers sheathed along his thigh. His tools rattled softly in his pack. Silver-threaded rope, iron stakes, charms of bone etched with the order's creed. He had hunted ghouls in graveyards, scaled cliffs after cliff spiders, gutted a wraith in a church crypt. He had never failed to bring down what he was sent for. But tonight felt different. The air clung damp to his skin, as if the forest itself waited to see whether hunter or prey would survive. The trail wound him toward a ruined village at the edge of the marshes. Broken huts sagged under moss, their roofs collapsed, walls split with claw marks that tore wood like parchment. The smell of rot lingered, thick with marsh water and smoke. Crows scattered as he entered, black wings cutting across the dying sun. The silence was thick, oppressive, the silence of a place where screams had been swallowed whole. Kael passed a well with its stones broken inward, as though something had crawled out instead of fallen in. He touched the hilt of his blade, reassuring himself with its solid weight. His boots crushed glass beneath them. Windows shattered, not by stone, but by something that had gone through, in or out. And then, movement. She stepped from the shadows of a half-burned cottage. Barefoot, ragged furs clinging to her slender frame, black hair streaked with silver falling across her face. For an instant, she looked only like a woman, dirty, starved, wounded. But her amber eyes caught the light, gold burning where human warmth should be. Her lips curled, not in fear, but defiance. "You tracked well, Hunter, better than the last ones." Kael's grip tightened on his blade. His voice came flat, the steel of his order behind it. "You're coming with me." Her laughter was low, sharp, too steady for prey. "Do you think chains will hold what the curse made of me?" She moved then, fast, a blur of claw and wild hair. The air cracked with the sudden force of her leap. Kael met her charge with steel, sparks flaring as blades struck against claw. Her strength rattled him, her weight nearly sending him to the ground. She smelled of rain and ash and something older, wilder, something that raised the hair on his arms. She slashed at his chest, claws screeching across hardened leather. Pain flared as one tore deep enough to slice skin. Kael pivoted, letting her momentum drive her into the wall of a ruined hut. Wood splintered around her as she tore free and came at him again, eyes blazing molten. He cut across her arm, drawing black-red blood. She hissed, staggering, but there was hesitation in her movements. For every lunge, a stutter. For every strike, a tremor of restraint, as though some part of her fought not to kill him. They crashed across the village square, stone shattering beneath her strength, mud slick underfoot. His shoulders screamed with pain as she raked him again, but he shoved through it, ducking low and driving forward. His hand snapped the silver-threaded chain free from his belt. Timing mattered. One heartbeat too soon, she would break it. One too late, she would break him. He caught her wrist in a hard grip, twisted, and drove the chain around her arms. The silver hissed as it met her skin, smoke rising faintly. The moment the shackles locked, her body convulsed. But it wasn't the chains that shook him. It was the fire that erupted in his chest, sudden and absolute, as though the world had snapped a cord between them. Kael staggered, breath catching. Heat pulsed through his veins, echoing in the rhythm of her heartbeat. He heard it, fast, wild, and his own matched it, no matter how he tried to fight. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but recognition. Slowly, a smile curved her bloodied lips. "So, you feel it too?" He clenched his jaw, dragging her to her knees. "What did you do to me?" Her laughter was soft, bitter. "Nothing. That's fate, Hunter. You've chained your mate." The word struck harder than any claw. "Don't call me that," he growled. "Kael Duran," she said, tasting the name as though it carried weight. He froze. He had not given it. She only tilted her head, golden eyes gleaming. Hunters shout names when they want the pack to hear. The pulse in his chest roared louder, beating in time with hers, impossible to deny. He gripped the chain tighter, ignoring the way his fingers trembled. "Monster," he told himself. "Curse, abomination, quarry." Yet every breath near her made the bond thrum deeper, rooting itself in bone and blood. But no matter how harshly he told himself she was only a monster, the truth pressed against him with every beat of his heart. The bond had chosen. Night folded over the ruins like a second skin. Wind pressed through broken rafters and sang along the empty lanes, and the marsh beyond the village exhaled a cold, reed-scented breath. Kael tied the last knot, testing the give of the silvered chain fixed to a beam inside the only cottage with 3 walls still standing. The roof had half caved, leaving a ragged triangle of sky. Stars watched through it, like distant eyes. She sat against the pillar, wrists bound before her, ankles crossed, but free enough to walk if he hauled her along. Lyria Vane, monster to his order, curse haunted to herself, watched him through the fall of her black hair, the silver at her temples catching starlight. He had wrapped the cut along her forearm with a strip from his own sleeve. The cloth was already darkening. "Pull and you'll tear it open," he said, more curtly than he meant. Her mouth tilted. "Worried for me, Hunter? Worried you'll bleed out before I can drag you to judgment. And yet you wrapped it." He didn't answer. He checked his weapons, laid flint beside tinder, set a low fire that would smoke less and warm more. Sparks climbed and died, glowing embers like watchful eyes. The heat got into his palms, and with it came that other heat, the one he wouldn't name, the steady pulse from somewhere behind his breastbone that synced to hers. He could hear her breathing without looking. He could feel when she shifted, when pain lanced through her wrists at the rub of metal, when she stilled because the curse moved under her skin and she fought to quiet it. "Say what you're going to say," she murmured, eyes half-lidded. "Call me abomination. Promise me the axe. Make it easier for yourself." "You think I need easy?" He kept his gaze on the fire. "I need truth. Your kind don't give it." "My kind." Her laugh was a scrape of stone. "You mean the kind that tries not to kill the man chaining them." He looked at her then, despite himself. She wasn't goading him with a predator's laziness. She was tired down to the bones. The wolf in her eyes flared and faded like a lantern starved of oil. "What happened to you?" he asked. "The truth, not the stories the villagers pour like drink." Her lips parted, then settled. "What does it matter? You've decided what I am." "I decide what to do," he said, "not what you are." Something in that answer interested her. Her head tipped, the silver in her hair bright as a knife edge. "A hunter who can separate the two. That's rare." "Answer me." She shifted, a small chime of chain. "There was a raid, not by wolves. Men, your men, or men like them, came looking for tithe and left with everything that wasn't tied down. When we tried to stop them, one cut me with an iron that had been wetted in blood and words. The curse went in clean. It woke the part of me that hears the moon as command, not light. Her mouth twitched. They say curses attach to grief and hunger. I had both. His shoulders tightened. Names. I don't know them. They wore hoods, your kind's prayers stitched on their sleeves. Maybe they were not yours? Maybe they were something uglier that wears your colors when it suits. You expect me to believe hunters cursed you. I expect nothing from you. A sliver of fang showed and vanished. I expect you to deliver me to a fire. Silence stretched, stitched by wind. The bond's tug low in his belly tightened, then eased. He hated how quickly his body learned her rhythms. He hated that when she shivered, his muscles answered with a twitch of protective instinct, like a dog lifting its head to a child's cry. He rose and took his cloak from his pack. Wariness crept over her face as he stepped close. "It's cold," he said, and draped the pelt around her shoulders before she could refuse. "If you go stiff with it, you'll be harder to move." Her fingers, bound together, tugged the edge closer. "Careful, Hunter. The men who made me monster did it by offering kindness first. I am not them." "No," she said softly, and for a breath her voice warmed. "You are worse, because you mean it." He could have left it, could have leaned on anger until it propped him upright. Instead, he dropped to a knee and checked the knot at her wrists, careful not to scrape the silver links against the raw skin. When his thumb brushed her pulse, the bond struck hard, a low thrum like a plucked string, and heat raced up his arm. She drew a breath that shook. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't. Touch me if you intend to hand me over like a butcher does a lamb. The bond makes mercy feel like promise." He stood too quickly, as if the answer were in height. "It's not a promise." He moved away, putting the fire and the breadth of the ruined floor between them. "It's a mistake." "You keep saying that," she said, "as if the word will change what you feel." "What I feel," he said, "is a trick." "And yet," she murmured, lashes lowering, "you gave me your cloak." The storm found them just before midnight. A coil of cloud slid up from the marsh and laid its wet tongue against the broken roof. Rain threaded through gaps and hissed on the fire until he edged it under the last intact ridgepole. Thunder grumbled far off, then stepped closer with a giant stride. The temperature dropped until breath smoked. Kael pulled the fire in tighter, added wood, worked the coals with the quick competence of a man who had waited out tempests under worse cover. The wall beside the hearth had blown out. He dragged a fallen door across the gap and wedged it with broken stone. Wind still found their ankles. He hauled his bedroll over, hesitated, then carried a second, thin, patched, back to Lyria. She watched him kneel again. "Are we sharing stories now, too?" "Sleep," he said. "I can't. Not while the curse is awake." Her eyes had gone brighter, the pupils thin, as if a moon he couldn't see was rising somewhere inside her. "It likes storms. The change calls." He didn't move away. "What happens if it takes you?" Her jaw flexed. "I break the chain. I break your neck, and I wake with blood I didn't choose in my mouth." He set the bedroll edge by her hip and lifted her bound hands to place them over it. The chain chimed, softer now. "Then you'll fight it. I'll keep the fire high. We'll wait it out." "We?" The word rolled in her mouth as if it were a new language. "Why we, Hunter?" "Because if you lose yourself, you said I die." He met her gaze. "And I am not ready to do that." The smallest laugh escaped her, and shame surprised him, shame at how the sound eased the tightness in his chest. "Practical," she said. "I prefer you that way. Your mercy upsets me." "Good," he said, and returned to the hearth. Rain drummed. Wind pried. Sleep did not come so much as ambush him. 20 minutes here, a gasp awake there when the bond jolted because she jolted. In one of those tattered dreams, he was standing in a doorway with a blade he did not wish to carry, and she was at the far end of a long hall, bound in silver. And when he called her name, he realized he didn't know it, only the shape her breath made in his chest. He woke with his hand half lifted, fingers curled as though for a throat. "Kael," she said. The sound of his name in her voice drove out the dream like wind the smoke. He rolled to face her. The wolf glow had climbed, amber gone to molten, veins along her neck darkened, claws pushing at her fingertips as if a second set of hands wanted out. "Talk," she said through her teeth. "It helps." "About what?" he asked. "Anything human." He searched for something small. "There was a fishing dock near where I grew up. It wasn't much, a crooked plank and 2 posts. My sister used to dare me to jump when the river ran fast. I did and cracked my head on the stones. She laughed a month." The memory landed gentle as a dry leaf. He had not told it to anyone in years. "I hated fish after. The river tasted like blood." Lyria's hands knotted on the bedroll. "Say her name." His throat closed and opened. "Mara." The glow in Lyria's eyes eased a fraction, the clawing stutter of her breath lengthening. "Mara." She repeated it like an anchor's weight dropped over a boat's side. "Mine was Syrah. She used to sing me to sleep when our mother's hands were too full with bread and pennies. Syrah married a man who thought work made him God. I did not like him. He died in a winter fever 2 years after, and I could not even be glad because she loved him and we were cold together." The curse pushed again. He felt it like a pressure change, his ears wanting to pop. He leaned forward without thinking, palms braced on his knees. "Keep going," she said, jaw set. "Talk, Kael." He told her of a hound he'd trained who would only heal for apples, of the woman who sold knives at the market and always slipped one dull blade into the basket with a wink, for practice, of the first time he lit a fire without help and sat up half the night feeding it like a newborn heartbeat. Her eyes steadied. The worst of the glow burned off like fog under noon. When it passed, she sagged, sweat dark under her hair, breath scraping. He had water ready. He lifted the cup to her lips, and she drank, cautious at first, then greedy. A drop slid down her chin. He wiped it with his thumb before he remembered not to touch. The bond rolled over him, heat and ache and something like relief, and he jerked his hand back as if from a brand. "Thank you," she said, voice rough. "For what?" "For talking until the beast remembered my name." They sat in the hush that follows thunder. The rain softened to a steady patter that sounded almost kind. "You said the bond makes mercy feel like promise," he said after a time. "I can't make you promises." "I didn't ask," she whispered. "I warned, and I heard." He raked a hand through his hair. "I have orders. You understand that?" "I do." She looked down at the chain between her wrists. "Will your orders understand you?" He said nothing. Out beyond the cottage, in the ruined square, a new sound joined the rain. Not thunder, not wind. Hoofbeats, muffled and many. Lyria's head lifted. The wolf in her sharpened. "Your brothers," she said. The bond surged hard enough to steal his breath. He rose in one smooth, silent motion, snatched up his sword, and doused the fire with a kick of earth. Smoke folded itself into the wet air and vanished. "Quiet," he said. "Don't move." She smiled without mirth. "As the lamb does in the butcher's hands." He stood with his back to her, facing the broken doorway where rain stitched the night, feeling her heat at his spine like a second heart. The hoofbeats slowed, then stopped in the lane. Men's voices, low, practiced. Leather creaked. Metal rang softly against metal. Kael drew one long breath and let it out through his teeth, tasting the choice already forming in it. Duty on one side, the pull in his chest on the other. When the first shadow crossed the doorway, he was already moving. The riders came with the storm at their backs. Lanterns swayed from poles, throwing blades of light across rain-slick stone. The hoofbeats were steady, purposeful. Not scouts. A company. Kael knew the cadence, men trained by the order. His men, once. Lyria drew her knees in, chain whispering against the beam. Her eyes gleamed faintly, wolf amber burning through the dim. You can't fight them all. He glanced back, blade already half drawn. I don't intend to fight them. Her mouth tilted, sharp as broken glass. Then you intend to give me up. The bond burned at his chest like a brand. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The first hunter stepped into the doorway, leather dark with rain, sword strapped across his back. Behind him, more shadows shifted, eyes glinting. Kael knew half their faces, men he had trained with, bled with, shared fire, and bred with. Kael, the leader said. Rain traced his cheekbones, cut through the scar on his jaw. Garin, his old captain. You've done well. You caught it alive. It, Lyria whispered, voice curling like smoke. Garin's gaze flicked to her, narrowed. Bring her. We'll finish it properly. Kael didn't move. You deaf? Garin stepped closer. Orders were clear. Monsters don't get mercy. You know that. The words landed heavy. Kael remembered nights by the fire when Garin had said the same thing with pride, when Kael himself had nodded agreement. The creed was iron, monsters were disease, and disease had to be cut out before it spread. And yet, behind him he could feel Lyria's pulse hammering through the bond, could smell her fear laced with defiance. She had not begged, not once. Give me the chain, Garin said, hand outstretched. Kael's grip tightened. Rain trickled down his wrist, into the links. No, Kael said. The silence that followed was sharper than any blade. One of the younger hunters spat in the dirt. He's tainted. Kael, Garin growled, voice low, warning. Don't be a fool. Whatever she's done to you, she hasn't done anything. The words ripped out of him like steel pulled from a sheath. Lyria's eyes widened, surprise cutting through her tension. Garin's expression hardened. Then prove it. Kill her. Now. Or you're no brother of ours. The bond surged so violently Kael nearly staggered. His sword trembled in his grip, not from weakness, but from choice. Behind him, Lyria laughed. Not loud, not mocking, broken, bitter. Hear that, hunter? If you kill me, they'll forgive you. You'll have your brothers back, your place by the fire. Shut up, one of the men snapped. Kael turned his head just enough to meet her gaze. Rain streaked her hair, clung to her lashes. In her eyes burned a strange resignation, as though she had expected this end all along. And he realized, with a clarity that cut bone deep, that killing her would be easier. Easier than this pull, easier than doubt, easier than the bond that unraveled everything he thought solid. But ease was not truth. Kael lifted his sword, slowly, deliberately. The hunters leaned forward, hungry. Lyria tilted her chin, exposing her throat, defiant even now. Then Kael spun, blade flashing, not at her, but at Garin. Steel rang as their swords met, sparks hissing in the rain. Chaos erupted. Traitor! One hunter roared. Take them both! Another shouted. Lyria surged against her chain, eyes blazing gold. The curse snapped at her skin, trying to tear her open. Kael kicked the fire back to life, smoke and sparks flying, a screen against the hunters pressing in. Keys, he growled, slashing Garin's blade aside. What? Lyria demanded. Your chain! Do you want to die bound? Her smile was feral, sharp with sudden hope. Break it. He wrenched her closer, sword flashing down. Silver links shrieked as they split, sparks flying like stars. The chain shattered and fell. The instant she was free, she moved, half shifted, claws ripping into the nearest hunter, sending him sprawling. Her molten gold eyes glowed like forge fire. She tore a shield away from another man and sent him crashing into the mud. Kael fought at her side, sword-carving arcs through rain and shadow. For a heartbeat, the old training guided him. Parries, thrusts, efficiency. But now every strike had new purpose, not to kill for greed, but to protect the bond burning inside him. The hunters faltered, stunned by his betrayal. Lyria's form twisted in flashes, too human, then too beast, then something in between, terrifying in its beauty. One man screamed that she was a demon, another that Kael was cursed. Garin bellowed for order, driving forward with the fury of betrayal. "Hold the line! He's lost! Cut them down!" But fear had ceded. The younger hunters faltered first, blades trembling. They had seen curses take men, but never one willingly chained himself to it. Kael parried Garin's strike, boots slipping in the mud. Garin's face twisted with fury. "You shame the order!" "I'm saving it," Kael spat, driving him back with a clash of steel, "from killing what it doesn't understand." Rain poured harder, running in rivulets down his blade. Lyria fought like the storm itself, claws and fury and sorrow bound together. She did not look at Kael, but the bond thrummed every time their movements synced, every time they turned together like two halves of one will. Finally, Garin staggered, blood on his lip, rage bright in his eyes. "You're finished, Duran! You'll hang for this!" Kael stood between him and Lyria, chest heaving. "Maybe," he said, "but not today." At last the order broke. Hunters fled into the storm, dragging their wounded. Garin's curses echoed behind them, promising this fight was not over. Silence fell in the ruins, broken only by rain and the pant of breath. Kael lowered his sword, shoulders aching. Beside him, Lyria stood half-shifted, claws dripping red, chest rising and falling like a bellows. The curse pulsed under her skin, dark veins crawling up her throat. "You shouldn't have done that," she rasped. "I know," he said. "You've lost everything." He met her gaze, steel gray, locking with molten gold. "No, I've finally found something worth losing it for." Her breath caught. The wolf in her eyes softened, if only for a moment. The rain eased, as if even the storm were listening. "You believe it then," she whispered. "The bond." He stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off her skin, close enough to hear the tremor in her breath. "I don't know what I believe, but I know this. I'm not letting them take you." For the first time since he had chained her, she looked unguarded, fragile even. "Then you're mine, Kael Duran, and I am yours. Whatever curse hunts me, hunts us both now." He let his blade fall, rain hissing on the steel. His hand brushed her arm, careful, reverent. The bond surged, not with fire this time, but with a steady, undeniable truth. "Yes," he said, "ours." Dawn crept slow and pale over the marsh. The storm had broken in the small hours, leaving the world washed clean, but raw, like a wound rinsed in cold water. Steam rose off the ruins, where rain pooled in black hollows. Kael and Lyria moved through the shattered lanes of the village, a phantom pair in the mist. He carried his sword low, every muscle ringing with exhaustion. She walked beside him barefoot, claws still faint at her fingertips, silver streaks in her black hair plastered dark against her face. The chain lay behind them like a shed skin. They had not spoken since the fight. They didn't need to. The bond hummed between them like a live wire, carrying every tremor of thought, every flicker of feeling. It was a steady pulse, impossible to escape, impossible to deny. At the far end of the square, where the last standing arch of a chapel framed the dawn, a line of figures emerged from the mist. The order had not left entirely. Garin had rallied the hard ones, the true believers who would see their creed carried out no matter the cost. Lyria stopped. Her eyes burned molten gold again. "They won't stop," she said. Kael flexed his grip on the hilt. "Then neither will I. You're human." Her voice trembled with something that wasn't quite fear. "You can't stand against that many." He turned his head, steel-gray eyes catching hers. "I stood against you." A grim smile cut his mouth, And I'm still breathing. The smallest huff of laughter escaped her despite the danger. Fool. The hunters advanced, shields up, swords drawn. Garin at their center, cloak plastered to his armor, face pale with fury. "Duran," he shouted, "step away from the creature. This is your last chance." Kael stepped forward instead, placing himself squarely between them and Lyria. "No," he called back. "This is yours." Raindrips still fell from broken beams overhead, ticking like a clock counting down. Garin signaled. Arrows knocked. The creak of bowstrings filled the square. Behind Kael, Lyria tensed. The curse clawed at her skin, begging to break loose. He could feel it through the bond, a pressure rising, her body ready to snap into the beast. If she did, she would tear through the hunters, yes, but she would lose herself, and there would be nothing left for him to save. He dropped his sword. The clatter rang loud in the silence, shocking even the hunters. He spread his arms, cloak falling open, palms bare. "If you want her, you'll have to shoot through me," he said, voice carrying clear. "Kael!" Lyria hissed behind him. "Stay with me," he murmured, not looking back. The bond surged, heat and ache and something bigger than either of them. He heard her breath stutter, felt her claws retract a fraction. Garin's face twisted. "You're lost," he snarled. "She's made you her thrall." "No," Kael said. "I chose." "You'd choose death?" Kael's mouth tightened. "I'd choose truth over your lies." An arrow loosed, slicing the air. Kael braced for impact, but it never landed. Lyria's hand shot past his side, claws flashing, and the shaft splintered mid-flight. Sparks of golden energy leapt between them, bright enough to paint the mist. The hunters hesitated, shaken by the sight. Garin barked an order, but it came out hoarse. Lyria stepped forward until her chest brushed Kael's back. Her voice was low, urgent. "If they kill you—" "They won't," he said. "You don't know that. I know this." He turned then, just enough that their faces nearly touched. Her eyes were molten fire. His were storm metal. The bond pulsed like a drum. "If you're going to lose control," he murmured, "lose it with me." Her breath caught. "Kael—" The bond snapped taut. It felt like falling and flying at once. Around them, the mist swirled. A breeze rose, carrying the scent of marsh and blood and dawn. Lyria's claws faded, her form steadying. She pressed her bound hands, no, free now, against his chest. "You should have killed me," she whispered. "Then I'd have killed myself too," he said simply. Something broke inside her then, not the curse, but the wall she had built against it. Her forehead touched his. Sparks of golden energy flared outward, casting light across the square. The hunters gasped, stepping back. In that glow, the beast in her subsided like a tide going out. She clung to Kael's cloak, trembling. "They'll come again." "Let them," he said. Garin barked another order, but the men were already faltering. Some lowered their bows, eyes wide. They had seen curses. They had not seen this. Kael lifted his head, voice iron. "Go home," he called. "Tell the Order what you saw. Tell them the bond is real. Tell them she's under my protection now." The younger hunters retreated first, then more. At last, even Garin stepped back, his rage banked but not gone. "This isn't over," he hissed. "She's a curse. She'll turn on you." Kael's arm tightened around Lyria. "Then let it be on me." Garin spat in the mud and turned away, vanishing into the mist with the last of his men. Silence fell like a held breath finally released. Kael let his arms drop, muscles trembling from the strain. He turned to Lyria. She looked smaller now, hair plastered to her cheeks, amber eyes dim but steady. "You're free," he said. She gave a low, incredulous laugh. "You've lost your order, your home, your life, and you call me free." He reached up, cupped her face with one scarred hand. "I'm not a hunter anymore. I'm yours." Her eyes closed. A tear tracked down, bright as gold in the dawn light. "And I'm yours," she whispered. For a moment the ruined square was only theirs, empty of everything but the sound of their hearts sinking. The bond pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady hum, like a promise written under their skin. Kael bent his forehead to hers again. She didn't pull away. Their lips brushed, a kiss not of conquest, but of claim, a seal over a vow neither had spoken aloud. Around them, the mist lifted. The first clean rays of sunlight slid through the broken chapel arch, striking them like a benediction. Somewhere out in the marsh, a crow cried once, then fell silent. They stood together in the wreck of the world, hunter and hunted no longer, bound instead by something older than creed, older than curses. "What now?" she asked softly. Kael looked toward the horizon, where the road curved away into reeds and morning light. "Now we run," he said, "until we find a place the order can't reach. And after?" His mouth curved. "After, we build something worth defending." Her hand slid down his arm, fingers twining with his. The bond answered with a slow, sure beat. "Yes," she said. "Ours." They walked forward together as the day broke around them, two silhouettes moving through mist toward whatever waited beyond. And for the first time since the chain had touched her skin, Lyria felt not hunted, not cursed, but chosen. And she felt two hearts beating as one. If you like this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Thanks for watching.